probably want to make sure nobody mentioned the Giants scores because I'm taping the game. It's for both.
You have no idea?
Wow. Nobody talk, nobody mention it, and we can
Can we say
remain
go
friends.
Giants?
We can remain friends.
You can say go Giants.
You can say go Giants.
Okay.
Just don't
You
say
didn't wear your
oh.
orange.
They lost a half an hour, John. I do that, I take the 49ers.
We're rolling? Okay, the October 22nd meeting of the Sewer Authority Board of Directors is called to order. Roll call, please.
Director Harvey?
Here.
Director Alafano?
Here.
Director Pettridge?
Here.
Vice Chair Warren?
Present.
Director Boyd?
Here.
Director Lohman?
Here.
We've got Pledge of Allegiance on the agenda with us. From the chair who's not here, do we want to do that?
Go for it.
Okay. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's a message from somewhere.
Yeah. I think that with the board's consent, we should move the closed session at the end of the meeting. Are there any consultants paid by the hour here for closed session?
No.
And is Oscars?
He's not here.
Okay, so there's no issue with moving closed session to the end, so we'll do that. Public comment. Any comments from members of the public or the board for items not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to special order of the day, proclamation to Sam retiree Pat McGowan, presentation on behalf of the city of Half Moon Bay.
Well, Sam? Why don't you come on up here if we can get you on camera? Sam, the city of Half Moon Bay would like to proclaim and honoring you. You were hired by the sewer district back in 1983. Quick math, I think it's like 29 years. That's a long time.
City.
Oh, actually by the city.
Yes.
Okay, it's even better. And during your tenure, you served in numerous capacities with ever-increasing responsibilities, starting as sewer maintenance worker too, and ultimately being promoted to lead collection worker in 2002. You've been dedicated and conscientious, right, for 29 years. Your expertise and reliability were admired and appreciated by your coworkers in the community. I think sometimes we see people jumping from jobs every year or two. It's really impressive when somebody can stay in a position in a company and work for that many years and do as well as you've done. So it's a real testament to all the hard work and effort you put in. I really want to thank you for that.
And on behalf of the board, I would like to express the board's appreciation to Pat. Special order of the Pat, would you like to say anything?
No, sir.
Ask him about horseshoes. He will.
I think his work speaks for himself.
That's right.
Okay, special order of the day, item B, receive and file SAM FY 2011-12 audited financial statements, reviewed by Jennifer German, manager of CJ Kuhlenberg LLP.
Thank you. We're presenting our final financial statements. We have a couple of required communications that we need to make to those in governance, so I'm just going to go through those quickly, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to address them. During our audit, we noted that there weren't any transactions entered into by the authority, that there were a lack of accounting guidance, and all significant transactions have been recorded in the financial statements. As you may note, accounting estimates are an inherent part of the financial statements. The authority's main estimates are using the estimated useful life of its assets, and its estimates related to its post-retirement health benefits. We encountered no significant difficulties in performing the audit. We noted no misstatements while performing our audit. We had no disagreements with management, and we are not aware of any consultations with other independent accountants. Those are all the required communications. I did want to make you aware there's an upcoming accounting standard. It's not for a couple of years, but it has to do with pension accounting. And you may want to put that on your radar screen. I'm sure most of you are well aware of that the authority will be required to start recording its pension liabilities beginning with the year end June 30th, 2015.
So, between our in-house administrative person and our consultant, for financial statements, do we have the expertise to handle all of that?
I do believe you do. And also, PERS will be providing a great deal of assistance. I do think they're going to be charging people for that, but they will be available to provide that assistance, and that expertise really does rest with them on providing those actuarial numbers that they're going to need.
Thank you. Anything further?
I don't have anything further.
Any questions from the director?
So there weren't administrative findings or any of that?
Yeah, I'm assuming you mean like, we sometimes will have comments, we call them material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. I'm not familiar with the term administrative findings, but along those lines, we had none that we noted during the course of our audit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we need any action on this?
It's information, it's an informational item.
Ready? So we'll move on to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just comment, I think you guys, this agency deserves credit. This is a nice report card, and I think you guys ought to give some credit for that, and your staff as well. So,
I'd like to add one of many.
Many, that's right.
And ultimately, this is what the public should expect of all government agencies. And hopefully all government agencies do live up to this level. Special order.
To the chair, just a small order of business. I'm kind of assuming that B and C should have been under new business.
It was probably done this way because of closed session, which would move to the end of the meeting. Because if we were to do closed session, we would in fact wanted those to be special order of business.
Well, I mean, they're under a special order of the day. I thought maybe that was just a proclamation. Follow me? And these items would have been new business. Not a big deal.
Well, the update isn't new, that's for, it's the wrap up, so maybe under old business, but not.
Either old or
But
new.
Special order of
Yeah.
the day tends to go with when someone's come out to make a presentation, that's the typical thing.
Well, there's people in the audience I don't recognize, so I assume some of them are engineering people. Let's go ahead and do that then. Update on SAM construction projects from EKI and SRT.
Tim, why don't you go first? If you've driven by the Burnham Strip, we've got a couple of construction activities going on there. One of which, you take your eyes, Tim. In front of the lens, Tim, there's a block.
Yeah, there's a cap on the
There's a cap on the lens.
No, I took it off.
No, it's off. And we have two projects going, one well-planned and very obvious, and the other one a little more subtle. The Granada Force Main is being repaired, and Tim and SRT has done the work of developing the plan and is acting as a construction engineer on it as well. Tim?
Okay, thanks, Steve. Well, the Granada Force Main project, can I, Tony, can you? Okay. Just quick overview. This project was approved by the board in August, and It's essentially in two phases. We're going to have one phase of the work being done this fall and the remainder of the work being done in the spring. The first phase of work is what you see going out on Burnham Strip right now. And this is requires bypassing a short section of the Granada Force Main, and so that we can get inside to do rehabilitation on it. And bypassing the pump station was probably one of the trickiest and most challenging parts of this project. That work is done. That was completed last Tuesday night, and then after we bypass, we clean the pipe, do an internal inspection, and then we put in what we call a CIPP liner. It's cured place plastic pipe. I'll explain what that is, and I have a couple samples of what we put in the pipe here to show you. And then the next step in phase one will be taking out the bypass and returning the station back to its normal operation, which we hope to be doing that by the end of this week. It's a very fast-moving project, and if I go to the next slide, I can tell you a little bit more about it. What you see here, all the activity you see out of Burnham Strip is happening on Obispo Road. It's kind of falling off the left side of the slide there, but you can see the Patola pump station. From the pump station, we've installed the bypass system all the way up to just beyond the Wilkinson School. And we've dug 4 access pits along the road to install a liner between each access pit. And once again, the black pipe that you see down on running along the west side of Obispo Road is high-density polyethylene pipe. This is what the bypass flow is going through. The existing pipe is 14 inches, slightly smaller, but has better flow characteristics since it's plastic and smoother.
I tried to get a piece of that from one of the guys on site, and he said, no, it's $27 a foot.
Well, here's a $27.
I just wanted to show it here, so the fact that you brought it accomplishes the other.
Okay. Make sure you put that in your Form 700.
Exactly. Well, again, when the pipe does come out, it is all recyclable. It's high-density polyethylene, and they use that. They can recycle it, and they commonly do, and they reconstitute it for other pipeline projects. So, to accomplish the bypass flow, we installed 3 sets of pumps, one at the pump station, one in the parking lot, and one down by the Wilkinson School. Flow is pumped from one to the next to develop the required head we needed to get flow down to the pump, down to the crest of the hill, where it flows by gravity here to the plant. Each pump has a redundant backup pump next to it. These are fully contained. They have diesel fuel tanks underneath them. They're quiet motors. We haven't heard any complaints from the neighbors, and so the pumping station, pumping bypass is working very, very well.
Do the controls detect if the active pump stops and automatically cut over the backup? Is it each location has?
No, there's a full-time man manning the operations.
24 hours a day?
24 hours a day. There's a requirement and specifications that, to assure that we didn't have any backup spills or anything of that nature. As you can see in this first slide, those are if you're driven by the site, those 2 green boxes near the pump station are the backup pumps. They are drawing flow from the wet well and bypassing the force main up to, again, the Wilkinson School. We've installed a trench across Obispo Road, as you can see in the upper right-hand corner. We also have a street crossing Coronado, where we put in a 12-inch HDPE pipeline, similar to this. When the contractor is done, we're going to leave these road crossings in place and bury the ends of them so that we can use them in the future should this bypass be needed again. That was an added benefit of doing the bypass here. As you can see in the lower right-hand corner, this is where the bypass connection is made into the existing force main. This work was done last Tuesday night, and it was very successful. The contractor was well planned and well executed work that was kind of challenging, working at night, working in the wee hours of the morning with pump station flows low. But everything went off very, very well. Next slide. And again, the next step of this portion of the project is inspecting the inside of the pipeline. As you can see in the lower left-hand corner, that is a section of the pipe that was cut out. In most cases, from what we saw, the cutout sections, the steel looked to be in good condition, but our CCTV camera that went inside, as you see in the upper right-hand corner, that's the camera coming out of the pipe. Inside a truck, we can watch and monitor the camera going down the pipe, and we observed several defects where the bituminous coating inside the pipeline had been pulled off and peeled away and was not present. It was down to raw steel. We've documented all these in a pre-construction or pre-CIPP video, and we also do a post-CIPP video, so we'll have these for records. But again, we couldn't see any significant corrosion except for where the liner was gone, and that's about it. Next slide, please.
Is that something where the liner would be worn down due to grit or other reasons?
No, we noticed it's primarily on the invert and up to about the spring line on either side. The cause for it might have been, material defect, a manufacturing defect, perhaps something during construction. Typically during construction, you'd have damage to possibly the spigot end or the bell end, where someone could get to it. These defects were found, between the joints, and so I can't imagine the mechanical damage or scour inside the pipe due to grit or anything like that causing the loss of the liner. I think it may have been installed improperly, maybe at the factory, maybe it didn't cure or adhere to the metal, significantly enough. Again, this is speculation by, just simply looking at observing the videotape. But in any event, with our new liner, it's completely encapsulated now, and I can explain that process here. So the CIPP process, again, it's cured in place plastic pipe, and I'm not sure folks are familiar with it, but essentially we have a felt liner with a plastic coating. It comes to the site inverted. If you can imagine, if we could flip this out like a sock. What the contractor will do, he has an on-site factory, essentially that large truck you see out on the site. Inside, they have a roller bed. That's a photograph from inside the upper right-hand corner. They stretch out long sections of the liner, and they impregnate the felt part with a two-part epoxy resin. This is a thermal setting resin that when heat is applied to it, it solidifies over time and becomes a hard, durable, plastic surface. And these are samples that I got from the site just today. Now, this is a computer-controlled process. They have a certain number of pounds per linear foot of liner for a 14-inch, 7mm thick liner, and they can do this and control it with high quality, high control with the computer system. After this CIPP liner is what they do called wet out. It's impregnated with the resin. They put it in the back of a refrigerated storage truck, as you see in the lower right-hand corner. Those are bags of ice between layers of the liner. And at that point, they bring it out to the field. The refrigerated truck goes over to the field where they start the installation process in the pipe. Go on the next slide. As you can see in the lower left, you have folks taking the liner out of the refrigerated truck and putting it into a pressurized vessel. As you can see on the right, pressurized vessel has a spool inside where the liner is rolled up inside, and then they pressurize with air and extrude the liner. The liner unreels almost like paper towel off a roll, and it goes into the pipeline. And the next slide, please. Upper left-hand corner is a mobile boiler for generating steam. lower right, and lower left-hand corner is the liner actually being put into the pipe by a couple workers. And you'll see in the right is the pressure vessel under pressure and the liner being inflated and pushed into the pipe. Now it makes its way down the pipe almost like you would undo a sock. It's inverted, and so that the felt is now on the outside and the smooth plastic is on the inside. Now this is all covered with resin, sticks to the inside of the pipe, and then we apply steam on the inside, and that causes it to set and become this way. Next slide, please. I had a video of how this process works. Could you back up two slides, Tom?
That.
Oh, I skipped right over it. This is a short video. Thanks, Tom. Showing how the process works, in case my Boston accent is confusing anybody. But this company is actually the company that's doing our work for us now, and they've done this work across the United States, Florida, Michigan, other areas. The name is IPR. The local representative is a company called Repipe. And this is similar to the tractor trailer you see out there now. It's an on-site factory. The liner is pulled out along rollers, injected with the resin, and a vacuum is pulled on it, so it pulls the resin in through all the felt. And then it is inverted into the pipe and expanded under air pressure, so it forms to the inside of the pipe.
Wow.
And then after it is in place, they take out the air and they replace it with steam and let it essentially cure for 2 hours. And it's very critical to get a good product that the temperature is brought up slowly, maintained for 2 hours, and brought down and cooled slowly. Here you see how laterals, if this was a gravity seal pipe, would be reestablished with a remote control cutter. In our case, we only have two features that we need to be reestablished. One is a blow-off, and one is an air release valve. And that is the video. So the next steps,
Is that really on YouTube?
there we go.
I saw a YouTube logo in the corner.
It-
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, I think it was on YouTube. And so the next steps, what we're doing right now, the contractor is about to install his last section of pipe tomorrow. Again, it's a very interesting process. Have a few moments that they're going to be doing this around 9, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Then we'll reestablish the access locations, backfill, pave, and return Patola Pump Station back to service. We're hoping to do that on Thursday night, barring no problems tomorrow with getting the last section of liner in. When we're done, we'll have from the Patola Pump Station approximately 250, all the way down to Wilkinson School Station 17+00, completely lined with the new CIPP liner. And the manufacturers, are calling this for an 80 to 100-year life span on these. Again, it's very durable, and I think our installation will benefit from the fact that we still have some material strength in our steel pipe, obviously. So we have fortified that pipe for many years to come.
And after the installation, what's the diameter inside the pipe after the installation?
As you can see, it's about 3/8 of an inch that we've lost, and so it'll be about 13¼ inch inside diameter.
Okay.
We ran the hydraulics during the pre-design to check for the impacts hydraulically to the system should we reduce it that much.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found was with the smooth interior liner, this balanced off, the minimal loss in diameter. And it was, we can do the hydraulics down to that finite level, and it was essentially a wash.
Wow.
And as you can see, we're performing well out there now, even when the rain and heavier flows at the pump station with a slightly smaller diameter pipe, the 12-inch. that we're using the bypass. So, we're confident that, you know, the loss in diameter will not negatively impact us. That's the presentation. Sorry it took so long.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
And I assume that black pipe gets reused somewhere else?
Yes, they'll typically just take it back, reconstitute it, form it into new pipe. They recycle it all the time. It's and it's very durable. It's high impact resistance. It's, you know, slightly flexible, so you can make corners and so forth. But they reuse it.
We can make it into, planters.
I have, I'm going to switch hats and put on my GSD director hat. We have a quarterly event coming up that is done in the morning of the fourth Saturday of the month, which is 5 days from now. Is the ad hoc parking lot immediately south of the foot of Port Hole, is that going to be cleared out by Saturday morning, prior to Saturday morning?
No.
I was assured a week ago that it would be.
Well, the major equipment will be gone, but the pipe that goes underground, that will still be there, but we've provided access above that pipe so the parking lot can be still utilized.
Well, what's going to be in there are a number of very large trash trucks, plus a lot of vehicle traffic needs to be in and out very quickly. But this is kind of late for us to change our announcement.
I don't think one's changing. I think truck traffic going above the pipe can pull in, and it's durable. It's buried about 3 feet.
Yeah, I'm also concerned though about getting a lot of cars in and out quickly. They don't park; they come in, drop off stuff, and leave.
Okay.
So you're not going to be able to remove any part of the above ground pipe by then?
Well, if things go well, we'll be switching over to the patrol pump station again on Thursday night, and they'll start dismantling on Friday. I could make it a priority that they dismantle that section first and remove those pumps.
I think that would be very preferable. So start with the part that's in front of the ad hoc parking lot that's immediately south of the end of Portola.
On to the south. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll notify the contractor to clear his equipment out of that area, and as he starts disassembling, we'll go for those pumps first, I guess.
Well, I'm thinking of even the pipe, because you said they're going to start dismantling the bypass pipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if the very first segment they could take out would be the part that's blocking the access there. Yeah.
Exactly. And that comes out very quickly. Putting it in is much more difficult because they fuse it together with heat and so forth. But it comes out more quickly than it goes in.
You can just stand out there and control traffic.
I don't know.
Yeah, get us some big flags.
Right.
Safety vests.
If I could have one comment, on the other project we're going to talk about, we did such a great job with publicity, with the big signs and all Susan's stuff was really great. At our last GSD meeting, we had more comments from the public saying, well, what's happening here? What's going on down here? It wasn't that, because now it was this other public. Is there any way we could do something that's not, we don't need like signs necessarily or anything big, but have some small designated sign and possibly some flyers we can hand out to people as they're driving by, and something to tell people what we're doing, and just a little more, because if people are still stopping us and asking for questions, maybe we could do it just a little better there. We don't need the beautiful signs Susan did and all that great stuff, but if we could do something simple, even if it's the traffic guys handing flyers as people go by, or just have a sign saying this is a project, to just a little small sign saying this is, so people walking by will see we're relining this pipeline or something, just to
and
tell people just a little more.
And that black
what's
pipe
happening.
won't be there forever.
Right.
It will be gone in a couple of days.
Yeah. Just something just to just make it feel better that it's not going to be forever and stuff like that. So.
Right.
And so,
Tony, didn't we do some press releases on this?
There's information on our Facebook site, and I think there was some postings at the post office, but it wasn't a mailing or anything.
Right, I mean, maybe just do,
Okay, we'll talk
just
to
something
Susan
real
about
simple,
that.
yeah, just.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on the site?
I'm going to ask Jeff Tarantino, who's been our construction engineer on the wet weather facility, to come and get you up to date on that as it's wrapping up.
With our wet weather.
Just in time. No, thanks very much. So just wanted to report that the wet weather flow management project, we are essentially 95% complete. We're going to go through some photos just to go see the construction. Overall, construction went very well. We started active field work right after Labor Day, and the contractor worked very hard, worked long hours, did work a Saturday to make sure that we got basically the majority of the work done before October 15th. There was initial concerns, I think if you recall, I was here in August. There was initial concerns about schedule and how kind of everything was going to fit together. Once the boxes showed up on site, first day was a little hiccup here and there, but they got a process down and everything went very well. So this is a picture kind of halfway through construction. I think we've got some of different stages. So this is as we're getting ready for installing one of the boxes, and basically what we did is we over excavated to about a foot below the bottom where the boxes are, so it's about 9 feet below grade. And we placed a layer of filter fabric and rock, crushed rock, below the box to provide a stable base and allow us to set those boxes at the very specific grades that we wanted to set everything at. And then we went through and started installing boxes, and as soon as we would install a row of boxes, we would go ahead and start backfilling because the site was very was pretty tight, and we needed to allow the equipment to move around. And what you see here is, you can see the black tape along the edges there. That's part of what I'll call waterproofing that was done as part of the installation on the exterior. There's also on the interior additional waterproofing that was done to basically make sure that these vessels are watertight. And we've completed all the exfiltration testing, so all the testing to make sure we don't have too much water loss going out. And all 5 boxes passed. 3 of them actually had no loss of water. And the other two were within, they lost about 30 gallons over an hour. And you can see these boxes as we set them. Very large, very heavy, took a pretty big sized crane, and in order to get these in precise. And basically, once the contractor got a system down, what we're seeing here is actually row A, so the first row. Once they got a system down, things moved very quickly. I think we had all the boxes installed. It was in about 12 working days to get the boxes in. There's much more time to do all the waterproofing that was required. And you see here is they basically were installing boxes, excavating as they went, maximizing the use of the site, moving soil around to make sure that there was enough space on site, everything was contained within the site, and generally things went pretty quickly after we got going. Didn't have any complaints. Had some questions. One of the teachers from the elementary school came by and kind of asked about it, so we talked a little bit about the project. But overall, the contractor has met the specs, and pretty successful. And here's what it looks like today. That water was installed. It was part of the exfiltration testing. Basically fill it up and then watch it over an hour to make sure we're not losing too much water. The standard was we couldn't lose more than 36 gallons of water over an hour, which is equivalent to about 2 inches of water in the manhole risers there. So
I'm a bit concerned about losing any, because the groundwater there, I believe, is very high, and also I was hoping that my district would be able to use the groundwater to water the surface during the summer, but are we going to be able to do that if this leaks during the winter? Or actually, come to think of it, there's still going to be flow through there year round, right?
Flow through the boxes?
Yeah.
There shouldn't be. We have, so the last step to be done is what we're calling an infiltration testing. So now we've tested all the vessels to make sure no water is going to go out other than a minor amount which was allowed by spec. We let the groundwater recover for 5 days, which we're nearly at that point, and then we're gonna go in and inspect the boxes and see if there's any water coming in. The standard that we're gonna use is there should be no dripping or flowing water coming in. There's some wet patches, it's below grade, it's gonna be in contact with some moisture, so there may be some moisture in there. There should be little to no water in that box all year round, unless it's being filled from an event.
Let me add one thing about the water testing. Water testing is done to the top of the manhole. We don't expect to ever fill that to the top of the manhole. And it leaks, the manhole rings are the primary leakage at the very, very top of it. In the range that we would normally operate this thing at the bottom, I don't think we've had any problems at all because it's below, it's got a minimum number of joints at half full or below.
So the box joints don't leak then?
From what we can tell, they don't. I mean, the most leakage we found was in the very, very top in the rings on the manhole, but that's so high up that it would be an overflow situation.
And the contractor's going to take an additional step and waterproof the inside, do additional waterproofing on the inside of the manhole rings, just to address the concern of leakage at the rings. So in the event we do see, water, sewage up that high, which, as Steve said, it should never be there.
So if the TDS testing indicates the water's okay to use for surface irrigation, there's no issue with?
I have the testing, and there's two things about it. Number one, when the site was excavated, they were pumping about 3 gallons a minute to keep the site dry. As they have been backfilling it and compacting it, the flow of water at the well went down to it went down to much less. So at least at this time of year, in this circumstance, there's really not very much water there. And the testing of it was okay. It was pretty hard, but it just wasn't a lot of it, and we didn't feel it was worth pursuing, especially since you'd have to bring power across the street and build a well for it and that kind of stuff. So I think it just dismissed it as since a lot of it was my thinking about it, it just didn't pan out, and a circumstance where if you went to permit that, any thought that the box might exfiltrate would bring, I think the health authorities would say, we don't want you to use this water.
That's what I'm concerned about.
And I don't think that's a problem, but I think they would consider that something that we would have to monitor very, very closely.
Very well. We'll run the purple pipe up there someday.
Anyway, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Actually, come to think of it, GSD's general manager mentioned to the board at our meeting a few days ago that it looked to him like the grading was done toward the manholes, and he thought it needed to be regraded. So that it didn't focus the surface drainage toward the manholes.
We basically attempted to restore the drainage to match existing conditions, and the natural drainage goes away from Obispo towards the ocean, kind of basically southwest. So in order to, instead of creating a mound over the site, which would have been, caused potentially other issues, we basically restored the drainage pattern, which is, yes, it's flowing across the manholes, but there shouldn't be that much flow from there, but there will be some flow going across the manholes.
Want to see my photos of water ponding in the Burnham Strip?
Yeah, it's exactly as shown on the drawings.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it was matching the existing contour.
But now, right up at Obispo, there used to be a drop about like that, which kept the off-roaders away, and now it's down like that.
Right. Part of the plan was to allow, so we have access for SAM vehicles, because occasionally we will have to get in there.
Well, then Sam's going to have to put bollards in there. That's a requirement of GSD, that you cannot allow unrestricted access from the street onto that property.
On the Burnham Street.
When is the actual seeding going to occur?
should happen in the next week or so. Yeah, you know, it's contractor's planning on it. I was trying to get it done before today when he saw it was going to rain, but unfortunately,
Good water
I was
supply.
hoping.
yeah, unfortunately, you know, didn't happen. But no, he's getting it scheduled.
Something control.
Okay, anything else on this?
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, item 4, since we're bumping consent agenda, closed session to the end, consent agenda. I have questions on a few things on the warrant reports. Let's hold the warrant report for here it's titled disbursements. Hold that. Is there a motion for the other items?
I move so for approval.
Second that?
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Warrant report. I'm kind of curious from the general manager. I actually have about 5 or 6 items here. There's business card order for a couple employees that I'm curious why they need business cards. Collection system guy and a treatment guy.
You know, Tony, can you speak to that?
Well, they're both out in the field, and people ask for contact information
Okay.
often, so they like to give those out.
Right, that
It's
makes
nice and
sense.
clean.
The next thing, and I've been out meaning for a couple of years to ask this, so it just all comes together today. What's the benefit to the agency of the receptionist going to the CWEA meetings?
It helps put her in contact with other people in other agencies when it's a networking event that we have operators go to. We pay for the staff to go to these. It puts us in contact with other agencies and facilitates, in that case, her understanding of the business and makes contacts in the business so that when she's doing business across utilities, that she has contacts there, just like we do with many of the other folks. It's also, there are also training sessions. Some of that information is valuable to her to understand, what's going on in the treatment plant or what's going on in the collection system. Those are issues that she sees every day.
I think I may want to talk to you about this more offline, because I'm seeing it. I can understand the treatment guys.
Thank you. Actually, I would imagine that this kind of thing is within the purview of the general manager's responsibilities. And if we wish to talk policy, we should do it here.
Okay. So what do the other directors think about what I'm asking here?
So what has been the procedure before? I mean, is there a policy on it, or is it set up?
It's our practice to, let me take a step back. The CWEA has local chapters, and they often have monthly dinner meetings.
Mm-hmm.
It has been our practice to support participation in those meetings of all the staff, and including unrepresented staff at certain times. It acts as a form of training and networking that is sort of no other way to get it, especially in a little agency like this where we're off out by ourselves, out by the ocean here. So I encourage it because it gets people interested in the business, and they get to see a broader base of what they're doing, not just what goes on at SAM.
So this is just the memberships and dues and things that they can go to?
Well, there's dinner meetings.
Yeah, I know, but this is also budgeted in the budget, so.
Yes.
Okay, so.
I was specifically looking at
CWA membership, Sandoval, and Antonelli, right?
No, I was looking at 74650, which is the payment for the dinner meeting.
74650.
The $140?
No, that's what I just asked. He said
Yeah,
no.
that would be for 4 people, for 140.
Which page?
No, that's for.
I don't know.
Well, you're the one bringing this up.
Well, I just wrote down the disbursement number.
I don't have a problem with this. I think keeping our people involved, engaged, educated, trained, I don't see an issue here.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think the time to question it probably should have been at the budget time. If there was a concern about people going to things and memberships. I mean, if it was approved through the budget process that these people are gonna have memberships and going to these meetings, and it'd be different if it hadn't been budgeted and there'd been nothing said about not knowing. So
Well,
I'm in agreement. I understand why you're questioning it. It's just that, I think, you know, if you wanna bring it up, next time, just bring it up at the budget.
Well, I pretty much agree with what you're saying, but let me point out that I don't think the budget drills down to a detail level of exactly who is.
Well,
It should be.
there's a reason that we have a general manager. And a lot of the detail happens under the general manager's management.
Because it will say
Yeah.
membership and stuff.
Okay,
I'm looking at 4 people, $35 a head for a CWEA dinner. You know, frankly, if we have good contacts there and we learn through those kind of relationships something about the next innovative technology or approach, that kind of thing could pay off big. And I'm not gonna worry about the minor cost that it takes to have people involved in that.
Okay, yeah, keep in mind that it's I think I just heard monthly. I thought it was a few times a year. But. All right. Well, yeah, since.
Do you have other items?
Yeah. On 74692, board meeting director's fees to Director Loman, he missed the October 15th board meeting. So that check's gonna have to be redone or something.
He's just making friends everywhere tonight.
We can note that.
You know, one of our most important responsibilities is watching the people's money, okay?
That's right.
Next item.
Actually, I skipped over one, I didn't put the amount here, but there was a fairly hefty payment to Project Blueprint. Kinda curious what all the work is that's being done that's running up a bill like that. It was like $7,000 or $8,000.
Great deal of preparing information for folks, getting, I mean, if you've seen the number of, we have overkilled in that particular area, because we didn't want any particular issues to arise. She's been on site, she's worked with the contractors, she's been in contact with the engineering folks to get the best information she could. We did not want, well, and she's currently preparing now for a dedication where she's preparing letters to folks to invite them to come, and an email list to invite people to come. Party planning, if you will, for that piece of it.
Well, I guess the way I want to put it is, is all of the work that you're asking Project Blueprint to do, is that really important to have done?
It's important if the project goes unexpectedly. If there happens to be an information gap or a miscommunication, those can be pretty daunting. And I chose to make sure that we had signage that was appropriate to the development of the signage that was appropriate to the site, that was appealing. We tried to make this a project, Sam doesn't get out on the street very often, so this is a project that would bring attention to the work we're doing, and get in contact with the people who, you're trying to get the press to cover these projects, isn't just a matter of sending them a note. Sometimes you call them repeatedly. I think, being that we've had certainly on the wet weather facility, a fairly smooth public relations ride, how much of that is it would have been smooth anyway, how much of that was really hitting it very hard. We hit it very hard for the reason that we didn't want, we learned our lesson at Coronado. We had a little hiccup there, and and got a lot of bad press, and we decided this had the potential for a much bigger hiccup, and we made sure that we went after every demon we could imagine.
If I might, this project that we've done got the cleanest environmental review, got a very lean budget to accomplish all the work that we've done. Went through with no protest at all. Has been met with very positive coverage in the press and response from our community. I've had people in Montero talk to me about it. They've seen the signs, they've driven by, and they're like, what's that? And here's a chance to talk to them about that. And I know that people have used the links from the banners to get some information about it. We know that when the stimulus funds were done around the nation, everything that was funded was above ground. And we know that it's so hard to get attention for the stuff underground, but what we've got by getting this much attention for what's under the ground, we find that time and again, our community rewards us with understanding and support for the kind of project. We know that, we could say all day long, keeping beaches clean is really important, but if they don't know what it means to keep the beaches clean, we gotta tell them. And here we share the information with them, invite them to come look at this, get all the information on it they want. And at the end of the day, this has been very, very simple, straightforward, well documented, laid out. The environmental process, beautifully done. The permitting was as quick as any permitting we've ever done. Just absolutely no drama about the whole thing. And I'm glad that we've worked on that particular phase 2 project for the wet weather program for something like almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And it went in the ground like that. And this is something really to celebrate. They should all be this simple and clean. Except a lot sooner. 10 years was a little long, but I'm grateful to have it.
Okay, well, I just wanted to, make sure that, assigning all that work was, the right thing to do.
Well, thanks for the opportunity
Sounds
to
like
let me go on about it, because I've been waiting a long time to get this project done.
Well, then I'll tag one thing onto that then. For those people who don't know, this project essentially extends the very, very small wet well at the Portola pump station. And when the wet well overflows, it's on Surfers Beach in a minute. So that's one of the reasons why this was so important to get this project done.
What's your next one?
I think I'll save the hard one for last. There were 8 manhole covers listed in 2 different places. Was that like different aspects of it or something? 'Cause we didn't buy 8 manhole covers twice, so I didn't understand. Like I said, I didn't mark this. But if you, let's see if I can find it real quick.
Who was the payee?
It was 2 different companies.
There's virtual polymer compound, something near the end. These are manhole covers, lock keys, for 3,854.
Okay, what's the number on that one?
74653, and that's starts with a V, so it's all sorted alphabetically.
It's on page 13.
Page 13.
Yeah, I don't think my paper copy lines up, because I did in fact read the electronic copy that was mailed out.
Virtual polymer compound is sorted alphabetically.
It's
The
not-
manhole covers
it's not
for
on this.
3854.
Yeah.
It's just not on this sheet.
Page 13.
Revised.
Does he have the old one? Does he have the old one?
You're looking at the previous one.
Yeah.
The one I'm
Pass
looking at
these
is
down
September
to
25 through October 22nd.
I think the one that was
Okay,
sent to
this
us
is the
by
one that was in
mail.
my packet.
Right.
Right.
Okay,
We
this is dated
emailed-
August 28th to September 24th.
Okay, that's the wrong one. So let's get you the right one.
A revision got sent out.
Do you mind?
Look at the.
Send this down to
Well,
me?
in fact, that's what I was working from, was the electronic copy.
Naomi?
And
That'd be page.
He's got it.
Page 13.
He's gonna check.
If he's looking at electronically, he has it.
So what was the question,
Yeah.
Leonard, on the manhole covers?
Well, so it shows there to virtual polymer compounding, and then somewhere earlier in here, there it is, at the bottom of the preceding page, it's listed under U.S. Bank Corporate Payments, which I believe is the SAM credit card. It says 8 fiberglass manholes with lids.
6,000.
So, those,
Hey, Leonard, I think he's got an answer for you.
We ordered 10, they only shipped 8, and they came to like $12,000 or $13,000. We gave them the first payment, we gave them 2 payments so far. First payment was for half of it, and that was the $6,000 on the credit card. That was to get them shipped out here quickly. And then they send us 8 and billed us for the 3,000. We get to, there's 2 of them are back ordered. When we get those, there'll be another $25,000 or $3,000 payment to finish them.
okay, so it's different aspects of the same.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. And the last thing that I have is really difficult to bring up, but it's 74681, $500 for the retirement dinner. I'd like to understand that, because I saw an email saying if you want to attend, pay X amount of money, and so with I just don't understand with the number of attendees paying that money, and then what's the $500?
We had put on a retirement party for Jim Thrall in the office here, and that came out. It was a barbecue for the staff, and I think Director Alifano came, and Rick came as well. We were going to have the same level of effort for Pat McGowan. He had a great number of people that he wanted to come. He wanted an evening event, and wanted it at a restaurant that was Mezzaluna. And I said, well, I won't pay for that party, but I will contribute what we've done in the past for other retirees. And since we've had 2 retirees since I've been here, that was the standard. That's where the $500 came from. One that we had in the office here for the staff and the other folks, and the one that we helped support at Mezzaluna.
So what did the $500 specifically cover then?
It was a per head cost, and we subsidized that to the tune of $500. I don't know, Susie, how many people came to that party? 50
people, say.
We, so I,
So did all of the attendees pay the
including me, yeah, all the staff paid. It defrayed the cost of the party and the gifts and that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, that's all I have. So is there a motion to approve the?
Move to approve the disbursement.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Under, I believe. Old business, 5A, update flow metering and management.
I have not been able to close the loop with the member agency managers on this issue. We've had some discussions about it, but during the month we did not resolve the issues that need to be resolved with some of the allocations and such. But we are continuing to endeavor in that direction. But I do want to report a couple of things. In our new NPDES permit, the Regional Water Quality Control Board is using our mid-plant flow as the official flow for our NPDES permit. And that was a change made in our securing the new NPDES permit that went into operation in October. One of the things we can report, the flows as we are calculating from the mid-plant, continue to match up within this month. It's 1.7% of the meters that are in the Half Moon Bay system. So we're comfortable that we have 2 checks on the Half Moon Bay flows and how that relates to the rest of the flows. We do intend to wrap up a few months ago, I brought a number of questions and proposed actions. We're still working through that with the member agencies, and our goal is to be back in November with definitive recommendations in that case.
Question, there was one sort of open item on this, I don't know how long ago, 6 months or so ago in the budgeting process. We were doing all these rounding things to number of years that we're gonna average over. One of the main reasons we were doing that is this rapid acceleration of those 2 years that was unexplained.
Mm-hmm.
Now that that's gone and essentially reestablished as a norm now, whatever the norm is, we don't want to continue that 3-year back averaging, because that would mean we continue to pay over and over and over again for those back years. So at some point in the budgeting process between now and whenever we take the real budgets, we want to go back to annual budgeting or whatever that was, to go back now that the flows have reestablished themselves as more normal.
Well, those are part of the discussions that the member agency managers are having.
Because we don't want to now, those 2 years where it was 35% all of a sudden, we don't want those averaged in. We got averaged in the front, we don't want them also averaged in the back.
I believe that your general manager and the city manager at Half Moon Bay are having side discussions about that. We need to bring it into one package, and we will bring that back so that it's clear where we're going, where we've been with it.
I have a question. Have we replaced the part for Algranada, the pipeline, what is it called, transducer?
No, the transducer problem was right here.
Is that what that was?
Yeah.
It's between the Parshall Flume and the.
I just want to make sure that you got fixed.
And that's
Yeah, I was going to ask that, so I thanks for asking.
It's not just the one piece, but it's like the whole
thing.
The whole assembly from the sensor all the way to the reading equipment, and that whole component's been tested end to end, and you're happy with it? You're not happy with it?
Actually, we recently just changed out the whole meter, everything.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
But apparently the meter wasn't ever really a problem. It was the.
You're right, and with the new meter, the meter developed a problem over a few days, and we replaced it, and we're not seeing any change. And we're doing other things. We're reading it right off the faceplate. We're taking daily, writing down the flows, and it's not showing a change. So.
What do you mean not showing a change?
It's still showing it that it's reading a little bit lower than the adjusted midpoint.
The sending from the sensor to the recording equipment.
With that, yeah, the techs are saying we've done everything now. We'd be feeling like we're setting it up artificially. We've done everything. We think it's right.
Is that mechanism still analog, or is that moved to digital?
Well, we're doing digital, we're doing analog, and then we're reading right off the internal.
Yeah. So
So
belt suspenders and duct tape.
and so at this point, I guess we could look at how it's cast in concrete, but the installation of the flume, it was designed pretty carefully. I don't know, people who've been here for a while know that the previous headworks had some concerns about the installation.
Mm-hmm.
So when they designed the new headworks, they're very careful. So,
Actually, the only people in the room who were there at that time were the two of you and Director Patrick.
So
that's why I'm asking this.
At one point, we talked about the possibility of narrowing the read point to get a higher precision thing. Have you given that more thought?
We have, and we had some people looking into it, and they haven't been able to come up with anything at least yet.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But you're still looking at that, or okay, cool. No, it sounds like some of these things are just it's like gremlins are out there. Remember the Twilight Zone episode with the gremlin on the wing? It's been like that. This has been a real.
Monster.
Yeah. This has been a real problem to get a handle on, but it sounds like we're at that point where we've got it pretty well sorted and dialing it in and getting it to where, I'm just gonna keep asking you until you're happy with this, so.
At some point, we'll have to,
Yeah.
One concern that I have though is if we don't know what the problem is, then do we really know how far back it goes?
One thing I know for sure is we've learned when the pattern starts to deviate, that's the time to question it, and we just gotta be more attentive to it. The business is about the 3-year averaging for, I guess, rate shock buffering. The idea is sound, but honestly, if we go back to a tighter feedback loop on that, then we know, hey, when it starts to go weird, that's the time to get in there and start asking, so we don't let this thing, I think it got away from us.
It did.
Honestly, so.
I'll put that question away.
Anything else on flow metering and management?
No, we'll get, hopefully we're gonna get some of these questions that the board deferred to the member agency managers. We'll get that looked at in November. That's what my goal is.
Okay, so we're moving on to old business 5B, review revised SAM reserve policy and adopt a resolution establishing reserve fund policies.
At the last meeting, I brought forward a policy outline that has been developed by the member agency managers for the board's consideration. And there were a couple of questions raised in that. I'm sorry, I don't know why I can't find my, Tony, not a phone, Tony. Well, what it does is it thinks the screen is bigger than it really is. Anyway, well, would you go find Tony? Anyway, I brought forward a
better I go find Tony.
and the significant pieces of it were that we looked at establishing an operating reserve. In this case, it was proposed at initially at 2 months of operating expense, around $500,000, and a proposal for $1 million emergency fund. Director Alfano asked that we come back with some justification for the $1 million. And I think we've found that, and come back prepared to show you how we. Oh, and I'm sorry. Additionally, the board asked that we take our current reserves and run them through this model. I don't know why I can't. I'm getting.
Looks like a very good thing.
No, I don't know. I had. For some reason, I'm.
Is this an opportunity for me to make some snarky comment about tax?
I'd welcome a snarky comment if we would get this, moving.
We got a Mac expert here. You just work for Apple.
Oh, I see.
I second that motion.
All right, wait a second. We got something going here. Hold on. Okay. All right. There you go.
Now we're smoking.
Well, okay. So I want to explain to you how we took the existing reserves based on the 2001 policy, and how we have analyzed the proposed policy converted into this, just so you can see what effect this has. We haven't actually done this. This is an analysis. Okay, the reserve policy, we're looking at creating 4 reserves: an operating reserve, day-to-day cash, emergency reserve, when big things go bump in the night. A one-year capital reserve, which would be a policy of funding capital projects for a year at a time. And if the project didn't go, that the money would be returned at the end of the year. And then a long-term capital reserve for projects that were multi-year and maybe too big for a one-year reserve. So that was the objective of this process. So to do that, we went through the list of Sam's capital projects. And in fact, in back of that spreadsheet that I sent you are red and green colored entries. And what those red and green colors are were Tony and I going through those and either defunding them or cashing them out to collect the money from that. Those projects went back to 2000 and 2001. So all the capital projects, with the exception of 3 that relate to the current work on the Granada Force Main, were defunded and put into would be defunded in this case. Continuing assets, which are multi-year projects, were selectively defunded. We went through and defunded some of those and kept some of them, and they'll show up as we move forward here. I'm assuming that our current construction projects will be completed and cashed out in 2012. The wet weather facility, we have. We're pretty close to finishing that up, and the Granada Force Main, I believe, will have that, at least most of that completed, at least the first phase of it completed by the end of the year, and that will be cash out of our reserves. Then I took and analyzed the existing funds through a scenario of a $1 million reserve and a $1.25 million reserve. The 1.25 is based on the Granada Force Main, which came up last year and was not planned for and fits the definition of a large project that was not planned for and needed to be done on an emergency basis. So that's the basis of the 1.25. Collection capital and continuing collection, we did not change those because those are different. That money's collected on a different fashion and a different methodology, and I thought it would be confusing to try and figure out. We need some guidance on where we go with collections, and so the collection data is unchanged in this analysis. So this is our reserves as of 6/30/12, and you can see it's broken down by agency. We have administrative treatment projects, collection projects, continuing assets, which are those longer-term projects. Old wet weather phase, the wet weather old phase had not been cashed out. The new wet weather facility is in there. We had operating reserves, and we had an unallocated reserve, if you see that, of $1 million. Okay. So this year we budgeted 3 items to come out of reserves. That's this year's budget of reserves. This is an allocated number. This one we're funding. This we're funding out of reserves. So this is what after that phase, if we take out the budget, the budgeted projects against reserve, that's the number we have. The next one is that same number, but we close out the construction projects, which is about $1 million, and that leaves us, for the analysis, to start the analysis, with $2.633 million. Okay, the variables in this, go back over them again. Operating reserve, $500,000. 2 scenarios of emergency reserves at $1 million and $1.25 million. There are no monies in the 1-year project reserve and no monies in the long-term capital reserves. Those would come through the budget process. the selected continuing assets, things like generators. We kept a large item for generators. We've kept that in the analysis. We'll circle back to that. Capital items were carried forward without change. So the new reserve policy at $1 million. Going through that, again, there's no one-term or long-term capital projects because we haven't budgeted for them yet. The emergency and capital reserve is $1 million. The collection projects and the maintained, these are the continuing assets, are at $500,000, and the operating reserve is $500,000. If we were to use $1 million, the difference in those, this line down here, I'd call that the refund line. That would be monies available to refund to the member agencies.
Hey Steve, can I stop you just for a second? My experience has been the one you show in yellow, emergency repair and capital reserves, $1 million. I understand that that's to handle things that we don't know. We haven't totally budgeted a line item, but something could happen. We need to have some money in the bank for that. Now, the next one down, capital collection projects, to me, that would be something we've budgeted for and we expect to spend that money. So what I was looking for was the $1 million and the 500,000. So those to me would be part of our reserve policy. Hey, in order to run SAM efficiently and handle emergencies, we need X, Y, Z in reserves. The other items to me are just part of the budget. I mean, they're almost extraneous items compared to the reserves. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm trying to show you where the money is. I mean, this is where this isn't budget. This is the collections budget, for instance. Those, let's say, continuing assets in the collection budget. That's for a truck. We've been putting away $20,000 a year for a truck, and so it's an asset that.
So this is money that we have now, and you're showing how it's allocated across.
Exactly. This is, and let me say, there's a lot we can do with this. This is just running. I didn't change those because they're allocated differently in the collection system. Montera pays a much higher proportion of the collection system's budget than Half Moon Bay does because of their complicated system and their lift stations and whatever. These things, we could run the same analysis looking at the collections. It's money we have in the bank. I can take that out because it's really part of our contract. But I want you to see what's there. That's why this is all here. I want you to, in fact, we've supplied you with our life, as you requested today, our life statement, so you know where the cash is. And at the end, you'll see there's some options and some recommendations we can make on it.
Yeah, I totally disagree with this. I have a lot of questions. Basically, because what you're talking about is more like, I was looking for a 5-year capital plan or something that lists all these projects, and it could be by agencies. It should not be part of a reserve policy. The reserve policy is for emergencies or something that you need to save for. And so to have these things that we know that are in it should not be part of the reserve policy. We should either have $1 million in our reserve and 500 in the operating reserves. Those to me are all capital projects or things that we are going to purchase. And it should have all been in our 5-year CIP or some kind of CIP plan. It should be part of a reserve plan.
If I might, could I get through the end of this, and then we can circle back to this. I think that those are good points. I just want to show you what I've done here so that we can have a full discussion of it. This is the analysis run at 1.25 million.
And the reason you went from 1 to 1.25 was?
You asked me to identify something that would justify that. A $1.2 million emergency this year is the closest thing in memory that if you said to me, hey Steve, when are you going to have a $1.25 million event? Last month, this month. So that's the point. I mean, it's
Okay.
Here's options. The operating reserve at 500,000. We haven't had a problem at 250,000, so that's one option that we have. Obviously, the emergency reserve at $1 million, 1.25 million. The continuing assets, those look a lot like the proposed long-term reserves in the policy. We could retain those continuing assets and convert them to long-term reserves, or we could defund and refund the balances of those assets and rebudget them in a long-term CIP in the next budget. Is another option. We need to continue to review the collections capital items to see how we could handle those in the future, and then we could refund excess funds as appropriate. My recommendations are that we keep the operating reserve at 500,000.
What's the current monthly disbursement total typically?
Well, don't look at this one. This one's that we set the emergency reserve at 1.25 million. That we convert the continuing assets to long-term reserves. That we continue to review and discuss the future collections and how the reserves, how the collection capital fits into that, and then we can adjust the cash to the member agencies after we've made a decision on
this. I see some different numbers that pop. I mean, it seems to me that we're all talking sort of the same thing, that we have reserves, which are the 1.25 and the 500K. Those are like real reserves, emergency reserves and operating reserves, and these other quote reserves are another way of saying we're saving money up for large capital things and these different projects and things like that. So they may not be pure reserves, but we're quote reserving money.
That's the way it's
that's
been,
the process.
It's been done
That's what
since
we're doing.
2001, yes.
But from different emails and different things, I'm getting different numbers of how much we actually have in the bank.
We have the current life statement.
Is that basically that number in the bottom right corner?
Well, that's as of June 30th. Did we
Yes, you got the 4.4.
Oh, I did. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Jeanette had these for me to pass around.
So
It's
if
4
that's
point,
the
yeah.
number, so whatever we come up with, we would be returning, our number subtracted out of this.
Yes.
So, when you're talking about things like continuing reserves or long-term reserves, we're talking about basically savings accounts for spending that's been identified, but we're accumulating until we're ready to make the expenditure.
That's right. I think in the past, the practice would be to identify a project and say, well, or identify a piece of equipment and say, well, that thing's gonna last 10 years, and then start banking money for that 10-year period. It hasn't been consistent, and historically we've, again, if you look at that list of capital projects, that's the one that's red and green. If you look at that, you'll see there's lots of projects in there that are 10 years old.
I'm not seeing that. When did you send that out?
It's in the,
It's in the packet.
it's in the packet.
Which one are you missing, Leonard?
Just turn your pages, you'll see it.
It's toward the back of that item. They're pink, or they're pink and green, okay? And all of those individual projects that amounted to about $1 million, we would propose defunding and putting that money into the proposed reserve system.
So there's three items, if I can kind of simplify it. The operating reserve, month-to-month money to handle normal kind of ups and downs. Number two, the major reserves to handle an emergency, which in your case, you said, hey, we had a 1.2, I want to put it at 1.25, I understand that. And then thirdly, the savings accounts to replace capital items, trucks, generators, whatever, that we know have a life, and we project out how long they're gonna last, and we're tucking money away every year until we're ready to replace that item. So I'm, so far from what I'm hearing, the 500,000 and 1.25, they sound like fairly reasonable numbers. What I think we're missing, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is the clear-cut identification of the third item. The truck costs new 20 grand, it's gonna go down 3,000 a year, I need 25 grand 5 years from now because the price is gonna go up, et cetera, et cetera. So I would think, and I don't really, I mean, I guess you could use the word reserves, I just call it more of, I don't know, what we use in the city.
Capital projects.
Yeah.
Replacement, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
a replacement fund, there you go, thank you.
I think we all understand.
Because when I hear the term capital projects, I'm thinking like, oh, I want to do a wet weather thing 3 years from now, so I'm going to bank some money for that. That doesn't make sense to me. But a replacement fund, yeah, I understand where that's coming from. So the only thing it sounds to me like, I'm not sure that we have the replacement funds clearly spelled out by item and by amount.
So there's a, you're looking at this stuff,
Yeah, that doesn't list it.
the current assets reserve, or continuing
Yeah.
assets
This
reserve?
page?
Yeah. So there's a
Those are
bunch
all
of,
just replacements.
yeah, well, I mean, just for replacements, I think there's a ton of it there. Does this pretty much capture the?
With the exception that at the bottom there, I somehow kept a number of $500 items, that there's a mistake at the bottom there, but generally, those are the continuing assets. And let me say, one of the things I think we have as a semantic issue is that in this proposed reserve fund is the long-term CIP designation for reserves matches up in practice with what we call continuing assets in terms of the dollars, what they're used for. So I haven't made that translation. That's why in the reserve policy options, I suggest that there's a couple of things we can do. We can take, on the continuing assets, we can retain them and convert them to long-term reserves by writing up, here's what we're doing with this and making it into a capital improvement program, a formal capital improvement program. Or we can defund all of those and then come back and put that money back into a capital improvement program through a budget process. It doesn't translate one to the other. Functionally, they work the same way. We've got, in the continuing assets, we have projects that are long-term projects that are part of they're really a capital replacement program typically. And in this proposal, there wasn't the right term for that. So that's why I have up there the continuing assets. We can either take them and convert them, or we can refund them and then go back and rebudget them.
I'm still unclear on what the term continuing assets means. Is that the annual set aside for the eventual replacement of?
In the past, we haven't done that for the last couple of years, but that, yeah, a continuing asset for a truck is a well, yeah, you have the treatment list there.
I think we need to find different ways of defining these things because it's very confusing. we either have a 5-year capital project, you know, what we're gonna purchase, what the date is, we're gonna use it. I mean, having this money here and not knowing what the heck it all means and not clearly defined. I mean, when I looked at this, I had notes all over this because it just doesn't make sense for me.
So would it be helpful for you if we had, like, on the, just for the sake of being on the same page, so on the continuing assets reserve page, where we've got a list of things like rebuild effluent pump number 2 and that kind of thing. We've got the list of, here are things that these are clearly replacement items, where we've got something now, it's gonna wear out, we're gonna replace it. I'd like to see, and this is just a suggestion, but I'd like to see an expected date. And,
Absolutely,
and then
that's what I
have,
just
so,
said.
just have columns of the years and then.
This doesn't tell me anything, because
Right.
there's no date, nothing.
So an expectation of when that money's gonna be
Right.
paid out, and some of them may be year over year because it just takes,
Right.
you know,
That's
like
what-
light bulbs every year.
And it's the same thing, and you're right, Stock, it's the same thing with the 5-year capital projects. I mean, you don't just have lists, just to have lists. You
Yeah.
have to have a completion date, when the money's gonna be used and why.
Right. Well, and it
Just
tells us
having
how-
all this list, continuing assets, what the heck, what's continuing assets?
Well, the data that you just enumerated, to me, that would go in a spreadsheet that I've been asking for since like
Absolutely.
2001. But I'm really uncomfortable with a reserve policy that has these numbers in it. I think that the reserve policy should be a policy that the amount is dependent on the bottom line from a spreadsheet that is required by the policy but is not part of the policy.
I think we need to tease apart 2 things. One, reserves for operating an emergency, those are clear. I think in terms of reserve policy, that's it. And then we've got funded things that we've identified for future. So we'll have capital improvements, we'll have capital replacement, we'll have maintenance. And what I'm looking for in this is an ability to sit here tonight and say, next year, how much are we gonna be spending to replace equipment that's gonna wear out? And I wanna go look down that column and I go, oh, we're gonna work on that effluent pump, and we're gonna work on this, and we're gonna work on that, and it totals up to this. And then how much do we have in savings for that?
Absolutely.
Okay, we need to fund a little more, or hey, we can move some of that into the next year, or send it back to the agencies. And I wanna be able to do that 5 years out.
Well, what you're
So,
saying
and
is-
so I want the big list of the things, and then I wanna know, here's the need on the date, and then I wanna be able to add it up by year and say, as we think about our budget for all the capital, both capital improvement and capital replacement, all 3 agencies can sit here today and know what that trajectory is on the stuff that's really non-negotiable, the stuff that's gonna wear out or that we've identified as a priority. Then the stuff that's variable year to year, you know, then we've got the other things, the overhead and those items, but treat reserves as reserves, replacement as replacement, improvement as improvement, and then all the rest of the budget. I think if we do that, I mean, I think part of what Steve's done tonight is said, okay, here's all the money that we're holding, and here's how that breaks out. And some of it is this intended reserve. The rest is money held in reserve, but designated to certain things. And if we could just pull those apart, I think it'll be a lot more
It should go
clear.
through a budget process, absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
you know, this matrix here, I think it's important for the board to have, but I don't think it belongs as part of the
Reserve.
policy.
Right, you're right, you're right, you're right.
These are identified commitments and objectives.
Right, this is a supporting document to the reserve policy. that
Well,
should
but
be
what I'm arguing,
followed.
what I'm arguing is that reserve policy is actually separate from this. This is about
Right.
the savings account and what it's intended for.
That's accounting stuff.
Now, even the $500,000 operating reserve, I would suggest that policy should state that in terms of the previous year's operating cost divided by 6. Rather than putting a number on it, it's supposed to be 2 months operating costs. So if you take the previous year of operating costs divided by 6, that would define the number in the policy rather than an actual.
Or you could
That's the way it was originally proposed, and I'm proposing a flat number because it's just easier to keep track of.
It is.
But it means we have to keep changing it. 'cause
Well, let's
back when it was
add some text to the
250,
policy saying we came up with that as basically 2 months, but we want to nail down a number for now.
But I
If
think
we-
when the 250 was adopted, that was 2 months.
It seems like everybody's saying the same thing, we have a consensus. So I mean, this all sounds, as Naomi said, she's looking at this 5-year ahead, are there any items that we've considered budgeting that are longer than 5 years? I mean, are we considering other major things that last 10,
We
15,
don't
20
have a
years?
capital improvement program. We have individual projects that have projected life, and you know, in the budget document, it's typical to see a project that's funded over multiple years and when it's expected to be. We do not have a consolidated capital improvement program. That would be nice, but this is the reserve. I'm trying to this reserve policy, the draft policy, which is behind your item here, was put together by the member agency managers, and I'm trying to have our money today reflected in this. So you can see, there was some expectation that we'd have lots of money to give back. I'm trying to go through this and say, if you apply this policy to the dollars we have today, here's what you can expect to get out of it. That's what I tried to do here. I'm not trying to do a capital improvement program. There hasn't been one. And I agree, it's a good idea. That's not what this is intended to be. This is to reflect to you, number one, how this proposed policy, which again has been agreed on by the member agencies, would look, how our money today, our cash today would look if run through this process. And the hard part for me has been, when you get to this long-term capital improvement, the only thing I have in the budget now that looks like that are these continuing assets, and that's why I used them to show you what things we're not interested in defunding, because those are projects that still need to be built.
But they're really not projects. See, that's where I'm having the problem. They're really not projects. They are replacement costs. That's the difference. Projects are projects. Replacement and equipment costs and things like that are separate. I mean, and that should be in the budget as replacement and whatever. And it should be a line item in the budget every year, whatever it is. Capital projects are big things. I mean, that you need to fund for. I mean, we have 5-year CIP plan at the city, and the list is so long, and the money is so short that, we have those projects. So when you do get money, you can say, okay, we're gonna be able to do only three streets. We can't do 4 streets this year. So that's why this thing really threw me when I looked at this whole thing, and I'm looking at, these are all replacement costs and things. And I don't see a 5-year CIP plan or any CIP plan. So that's what I had on the notes. And then on the first part of the SAM reserve policy, the target you have down is to have 2 months of the fiscal year. But then in the front, you said 500, so I was a little confused. So, so I don't know if it's 500 or the 2-month thing, because the one on page 1 says
The 500 is a derivation of
the 2 months.
in the I think in the budget proposal, where does it say that? Yeah, it says a fund equal to 2 months, and that is about $500,000 currently. And
Okay, so actually it should say 500.
yes.
Okay.
Reflecting back, I know it sounds silly, but with Ocean Colony, every year we looked at 2 basic things, the operating cost and the reserve fund. And the reserve fund for us was streets and desks and cars and whatever. And we had a company came in and they did a reserve analysis, and it went out sometimes 20 years, for example, on a street, 5 years on a truck, yada, yada, yada. And then they come back and said, okay, next year in your reserve fund, you should have $2 million. And we only had 1.8. We knew our contribution on the budget had to be $200,000. And that was basically, in effect, your replacement fund. We knew what that was for. On the operating budget, we would have an operating reserve, an emergency reserve, those lines. Now, next year, we might look back and say, you know, we were high at 500. We can trim that back to 400. It's something you can look at and adjust every year. I think this is a good start point. We know what these are. Now, the one that does bother me, that I think is hanging out there, are projects that maybe have gone beyond a year. And then we had that problem also. Something would go beyond a year, and now you had money left over in the bank, and it just confused the hell out of everything. And we learned the hard way. If the project's for this calendar year, finish the damn thing and get it done. Because when things carry over, you get inflated numbers, you get confused, it just really messes things up. So what I'm looking for, and I think we're all saying the same thing, is to break these out real clear, and whatever that reserve or replacement fund needs to be, when you, what's that word I'm looking for, when you go down,
Drill down.
when you drill down, you can see, oh, there's the truck, there's the generator, there's the pipe, whatever it is, and it's analyzed out, and here's the contribution for this current year, what we need. And then we look at it each year and see if we're doing, how we're doing with our replacement fund. But the way I see this is I see Sam nailing down the budget better by category. So as Scott was saying, we can look forward and back and see how well we're doing and say, oh boy, trucks are going up faster than we thought. We need to put a little more money into that. Now again, and I'll throw this out there, if we need some outside help to set up that reserve, the replacement fund, and get that nailed down clearly, maybe that's something we should consider doing.
I think it's a simple Excel spreadsheet that,
Well,
you know, I could set up.
I believe.
Volunteering?
That's how simple it is, because I'm
No,
not an Excel expert.
well, I have a copy of it. Steve sent it out recently, and it lists all of our capital items, and it's got a whole lot of information in there. They're already working on this. I think, I don't want to nitpick too much on the presentation tonight. I think we've come to understand that he was trying to convey, here's all the money that we've got, here's how that breaks down, now let's talk about these two items, because that's really the decision here. And then on the CIP, you know, next month's gonna be the perfect month to go into, let's talk about, as we start the budget, what projects actually belong on our CIP. And that's,
You mean what items? When I hear the word projects, I'm
Yeah.
thinking of building a new building.
I would, yeah,
And I
yeah,
don't-
new items,
Yeah.
however we want to characterize it, whatever we want to identify as necessary or desirable capital projects. I'm just going with the CIP language, so capital improvement projects. It's got capital, it's got improvement, it's got projects, right? So I'm just going with projects. That's where I'm getting my terminology, so we're on the same page. That needs to be a whole separate discussion from this of what's on that list, what can we agree on, what is staff recommending to us, so we can start to sift through that, because an organization like this can't sit still. There's things that need doing. So, but I think in terms of reserves, we've got a pretty, I was kind of harping on this thing last month about, you know, where's that $1 million come from? I wanted some kind of rational basis for it. This project that just came up, okay, asked and answered. Yeah. I thought it might be a little more elaborate than that, but okay, fine.
I'm not gonna make one up.
The 500, I think we do well on the policy itself. If we say 500 is, we came to 500 by picking a round number right near 2 months worth of operating. As long as we record that, 4 years from now when we look back at it, we go, where did 500 come from? We know. And I agree with you too, that if 2 solid months is more than we need, dial it back. If it's not enough, we dial it up, whatever we need to do.
And at least you have a number, so when you do budget, everybody knows what the number is.
Yeah.
So I'm really a number person, I want that number.
And I love the idea, which I think everybody's agreeing with also, is these, as you've identified these old projects, shut them down, pull the money. So
Are you
the
going to
whole
report to
process
the
is
board
going
on what uncompleted projects are on the books?
Well, if you look at
The green and red thing are the list of them.
yeah,
All of those have been defunded, except for the ones in yellow where we moved some money into the IPS repair.
see the green ones are marked defund.
Defund or cash out.
So I think we're on the right track.
And that's,
So something that's happened here, you've defunded
About
over
$1
$500,000 bucks, 548, almost 549,000.
yeah,
Right.
it's one of those things that occurs in every utility's capital budget, is that you get these bits and pieces in there and they need to be cashed out. I cashed all those out. The ones I didn't cash out were some of the ongoing projects, which strike me as the definition of long-term capital repairs, capital replacements. And as I proposed, we could defund all of those and rebudget them. That's an option as well. And that's something that's the board would. It's clear to the board to defund it, transfer the cash, and then go rebudget it. We can do that as well. But we don't have a capital improvement program, and we haven't had one for a while. And that's gonna take some time to especially have a comprehensive one. We can do it project by project, but have a comprehensive integrated one's gonna take a little time.
What's the status of the spreadsheet? I don't know what to call it, but the spreadsheet that shows expected equipment replacements and remaining lifetime and replacement costs at end of life. What's the status of that?
Status of that is Scott has a copy of it.
But I thought that you had given us a preliminary one that just had some big ticket things on it.
I'm not sure you're talking about that.
How complete?
We need a motion, we needed a direction or motion for the reserve policy that we've all agreed to do, the part that we have agreed.
I was just looking at that. Do we have?
We have consensus, it sounds like, for this actual.
I think on the we might want to pencil in a note on the operating reserve. Let's see. So right now it says operating reserves on item 2 equal to 2 months of the fiscal year budgeted operating expenses. Why don't we say 500,000 based on roughly 2 months?
I wouldn't even say what it's based on, just put 500,000.
Well, like Leonard
For future
said,
analysis,
when we did this years ago, it was half that, but it was still 2 months.
That was years ago, Scott, things have gone up.
No, but
Right, but
no,
that's
but
the point, is the number didn't get adjusted even though the cost went up.
when we looked at 250, we're like, where'd that number come from?
But if it's a policy and you look at it, you can go back and revise it. We revise our reserve policy all the time.
I'm just suggesting that we keep a note in there about how we came by that number, so we don't have to.
As a footnote, you mean?
Yeah, sure. I'd be perfectly happy with a footnote.
Okay.
Because it's like we picked a number, and for any curious person who's got this and none of the rest of the history, they can figure it out.
We have a suggested resolution here, I take it?
Yes.
What did, oh, wait a minute.
It's the
last page.
So it's resolution blank, right?
Yes.
Establishing sewer authority of Midco reserve funds policy, but I don't see where we talk about any of the numbers in here.
That's just a resolution, but the policy is at page 1. Say reserve policy right there, that's why I have all these
Yes,
marks.
it's 2 pages.
Oh,
following
okay.
I
the-
think it says draft.
It
It
says
outlines the policy.
So the recommended motion is to adopt attached resolution next in sequence, repealing SAM 2001 reserves policy and adopting the SAM reserve policy dated October 22nd, 2012 as with the board modification.
So, see, this is where it really is not, where I'm not in agreement, because I think the operating and the other one that had the 1.25 million, all this emergency repair, the 1-year capital reserves and all that, we don't have it. And so, that's why I asked what the long-term capital improvement projects were, because I couldn't find anything on it and all that kind of stuff. So are we putting the capital projects in reserve? That's, we don't
Well,
put
it's
capital
just,
project
well, but they're
reserves.
they're kept in lit, and so,
But there, doesn't matter if they're kept in late, they're not a reserve policy, that's what I'm saying.
well, it's, the language I think comes from, really kind of goes back to the Little Hoover Commission report about the uncommitted reserves that agencies were holding. And so ever since that was done, and I think that was like '03 or something, every agency's been trying to identify all the money in the bank. It's, you know, it's all allocated, and we identify what it's allocated to.
But you can do that, but it shouldn't be in the SAM reserve policy, that's
Well,
what I'm saying.
I think we came to this by, and I'm not defending, I'm just how we came
No,
to
I
it.
understand
I
that.
think we came
So-
to it because it's held in
But
late.
I understand what you're saying,
Okay.
Scott, but it should not be part of the reserve policy. If you're doing that money and it's identified in your budget that the capital project, this is what the money's in there for,
Mhm.
it's, you've got to document it. But it shouldn't be part of the reserve policy because it's not a reserve policy.
Well, you know what bothers me is,
So
I see the resolution here,
It
and I was
doesn't
wanting to
talk
make a
any
motion.
of
The
it.
problem is, the resolution
Doesn't even talk to that.
refers to the front page, right?
No, it
No, it
refers
refer-
to the draft.
It refers to the following two pages, 1 and 2.
Page
Says-
3.
Draft across the face of it.
Yeah,
Same
See
reserve
the
policy.
SAM reserve policy that says draft.
I think,
2 page.
oh, okay,
It's a 2-page
there we go,
document.
okay.
Yeah.
So then, why don't we do this?
Yeah, that's it.
Let's stop the reserve policy after operating an emergency.
so the one thing that this reserve policy, well, when we look at that 2001 policy, I think the Little Hoover Commission goes back to them, because that's where we started saying any money in savings, and their terminology in that report was committed reserves and uncommitted reserves. And so what we were doing was looking to where we could identify committed reserves, so they couldn't come do the ERAF kind of theft from the agency, right? So I think that's where the language for reserve came from for these, you know, the project holdings or savings or reserve. I think we just have to choose what word we're comfortable with for that.
But
I don't
you
really
can
care.
You can set up a separate policy in your budget saying that these are your money for certain projects. But they should be listed in your budget.
Oh, I agree. I agree. They should be in the
And
budget.
so if they're listed in your budget, then those have been identified as the money that's in that.
Well, when you look
But you
at
don't list,
when you
you
look
don't
at these
say it's
sections-
part of your reserve policy.
But what we were trying to do with the one in 2001 was make sure that we committed our reserves so they weren't available for theft.
And I understand what you're saying,
And
so now
so-
if it's in the budget process and you have it all listed out, then the resolution would make sense.
So I
It
just want to make
doesn't
sure. I just want to make
sense
sure.
when you do all this other stuff.
I just want to make sure that we don't get into a situation where our savings is uncommitted. And the existing policy does that, whether we like the language or not. It does identify committed and uncommitted reserves.
I think this is a two-step process. Tonight, we're gonna identify and move, hopefully, on operating the emergency reserve, 2 numbers we've agreed upon. We stop right there. Phase 2 is we have to come back and nail down the process for everything else in the budget that is projected out for replacements, or whatever the heck we're gonna call that. But we're not gonna do that tonight. We don't have that information yet.
Okay, well, let me just ask you to take a look at what's in here for the, and I don't like the header on this, the 1-year capital project reserve. All it is about, it says things like, not all projects will benefit all member agencies, so some won't participate, that remaining funds will be returned after 60 days after the end of the fiscal year. It doesn't speak to amounts, it doesn't speak to projects, it speaks to how we handle that money upon certain events. So I don't know that it's really that out of place here. I just want to make sure that we don't rescind the one and leave a hole
But that's not part of your resolution.
No, it is, because the resolution refers to these 2 pages as written.
Where does it say that?
Adopting the Salmon Reserve policy dated October 22, 2012, which is Salmon Reserve policy dated
Okay,
October.
and that's what I don't agree with.
That's fine. I just don't want to repeal the first one until we've got both pieces of that taken care of. So
But
why don't we
what
bring this
Alan-
back?
I think what Ellen is saying is correct, because it's a two-step process.
Can we bring it back next month and have
Sure.
both pieces ready? That way we don't leave that hole. That's all I'm saying. I just don't want to.
And we don't have to have every spark plug laid out. In terms of the policy, we've got the operating, the emergency. The third part should be replacement funds, and we should simply spell out, what is our policy? How do we determine what those items should be? Because I don't like hearing the word projects, because that makes me think of building a building.
Well, it would be part of the equipment replacement spreadsheet that I keep referring to.
Right, and it can be policy, and we can handle Scott's concern about committed and uncommitted, as these are monies that are being set aside to replace things down the road.
So I think what we're suggesting is next month, let's cut out the top half of this as the reserve policy, create another thing, which is we need a good accounting name for it that talks about committed replacement funds.
It's actually.
Replacement funds.
It's a replacement.
Yeah, we need to talk about it in terms of what it is, right? So it's the replacement
It's just
fund.
replacement
Yeah.
policy.
Well, so we've got different kinds of things, so the
Maybe
replacement fund
Parsons
is
has a
definitely
word for it.
something,
Let's see if Parsons has a word for what we're looking for.
yeah, I agree.
I think it's
So-
replacement funds.
So
Yeah.
we're looking for 2
Replacement
documents that
fund.
will replace the existing with next month. Is that, we hammered that into
Into the
a
ground.
10 sheet of paper?
Might make putting the budget together a little tougher, but we'll do what we can.
One other thing I would request is that we completely separate out collections from the rest of the SAM budget.
Got it?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because it's accounted for so differently. There's just so many things that are different about it that I just don't like it being.
I wanted to be sure you saw where the cash was, and that's fine with me. I have to keep a separate page, no problem. Because it is, they're accounted for completely differently, and differently in every year, so it's not an easy one.
All right, I want to remind everybody that we still have closed session, so
Yeah.
Sure.
we're ready to move on.
Yes.
New business, item 6A, adopt resolution next in sequence reaffirming the investment policy and guidelines.
Our auditors have recommended to us that we reaffirm our investment policy on an annual basis. Had questions today whether or not there have been changes in our changes in the public agency investment rules. We're not aware of any, so we're proposing that you adopt our existing, that you confirm our existing rules.
So the policy that you printed here is basically identical to previous years?
This is the resolution is identical to previous years.
So
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, yes.
SAM operates under the law for sanitary districts, and sanitary districts can invest their money in at least half a dozen different types of instruments, but it seems that on the coast side we pretty much focus on life as being the most, what do I want to say, secure in terms of not losing principal. So, we might be able to get a better return somewhere else, but then the risk goes up for losing the principal. Would we want to invest it with the county and lose it in the Lehman Brothers?
That's right. So, through the chair, so my question is SAM's policy, and have people reviewed it according to the government code that has been updated for our policy? Because I noticed this policy is 2005. So, I just want to make sure that our policy is in compliance with the new updates, because I know the city had to update theirs. The other thing I noticed was that in the back investment practices, where it says a register of investment shall be kept by the treasurer or his/her designee. Registers of investment shall be reviewed at each board meeting. So is that being done?
Wouldn't that just be the late statement, since that's all, where all of our investment is?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Who's
Yeah.
the treasurer, and is this given to us every month?
Yes.
The late one? Okay.
So even though it's not explicitly stated, the treasurer effectively delegates producing that statement to staff.
Okay. All right. I don't want to be a name vendor thing.
And it's been in life for as long as I've been on these boards. You know, one of the sheriff's deputies had a police dog named Blake.
But just through the chair, I just want to make sure I was reading this right. So Sam, total investments are 4.4 million?
Yes. That's, we have a, Jeanette, we have a, Director Alfano was asking if our total investment's 4.4 million, but we do have other cash, and,
We have a money market account.
right, which isn't considered an investment.
That's the page on back?
Right, it's not considered an investment
And
by
that's-
our auditor's standards.
That's basically for operating funds if needed?
Correct, right, so we
Okay.
can do
Pays the
transfers to
bills.
checking.
And then, wouldn't you typically have a 5-digit balance in the checking account?
Yeah,
200 to 400, depending on the month. This month it was bigger.
way bigger. It was close to 700,000.
Anything further, or do we have a motion?
I really.
I'll second.
I've lost my pen. First guy. Okay, motion by Director Patrick, second by Director Boyd. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Item 6B, authorize general manager to conduct public hearing on proposed non-domestic waste source control program, NDWSCP fee schedule for.
We're required to have a fee schedule and a hearing for our non-domestic waste dischargers. I'm requesting the board allow me to schedule that for the 19th of November so that people can come and speak to this if they need to.
So that's our revised regular meeting date for November.
That's correct.
So a motion?
So moved.
I have a question. What is this non-domestic wastewater control program?
If you have a restaurant and you're producing grease in the trap, we have a formula for how much extra you need to pay for that, for our services to look at it.
It's for commercial.
Yeah,
Okay.
non-domestic.
Well, there's a list in here of the business entities that are included in the program.
Okay.
And some of them, Sam has determined, don't put anything into the sewer system that is a potential issue, so they don't pay the fee, and I guess that's the NA that's in here.
Well, there is a fee, there's a fee.
They all pay a fee.
Oh, even?
They all pay a fee, but say a dentist doesn't have any discharge, but we want to track their mercury waste. So we permit them, they pay the basic charge.
Oh, okay. Guess I'd forgotten that detail. So,
So it's
motion
been
was
moved.
by,
I'll second.
who was the second? Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Item 7, manager's report.
Couple of, one mundane thing, if you wandered in, you can see we're half through painting the building. And it was, probably would be through had it not rained.
Inside or outside?
Outside.
Oh. didn't
And we
notice it was dark.
picked a luscious color of lime green to match the existing, but we're in the process of painting that, which, so if you get lost, look for the lime green building. And the
It'll
other
be
thing
lime green. This building's going lime green?
lime green.
It'll be like
It's the same color, it's always been. Isn't that lime green?
Outside.
It's
Very old line.
It's
Forest
a-
Service.
Old line.
It's actually sanitary system green.
Sanitary sludge.
My only other report is that.
You don't want it brown.
You should mark your calendars. We are putting together a dedication of the wet weather facility for the afternoon of the 16th of November,
What day of the week is that?
Friday.
Oh, good, to make it.
Okay, and you'll send out at least a couple days in advance.
We will send out many things, postcards and emails, and in some cases letters.
Okay, so it was November 16th.
I think it's at 3, but it's in the mid-late afternoon.
Don't
Is that
make
gonna
it
be
too
on-
late, we don't wanna get the traffic coming north.
That'll be on site over there?
Oh, yeah.
Over the number 3 manhole.
Yeah.
We have a
we'll
lot
get
of good
that traffic on
hotels
92
up here, you
either.
guys can get a room up there.
Okay, anything else under manager's report?
That'll do it.
Thank you. Attorney's report.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Director's reports. We have public comment again, but public's down to one person.
Excuse me, Director, I will amend my report to say that one of my staff people, one of my directors was out on first flush last night. And you may have something.
So was I.
No, my point is, one of my staff and one of my directors.
Oh.
It's a prompt.
And the GSD administrator for the first time.
I heard that. Anyway, that was nice of you to do that. That's a really good thing.
So, closed session.
Okay,
I
so.
have one real quick. Next Tuesday, October 30th, is the quarterly meeting of the San Mateo County chapter here of Special District. So
Next.
Tuesday, October 20th, October 30th, sorry.
Tuesday, October 30th.
So if people are interested in that, the agencies get notified, but if other people are interested, just get a hold of me. I can tell you where it is and things like that.
Got a guest lined up?
The guest is going to be from Sustainable San Mateo County. I forgot his name. And I think the agency presenting is the mosquito control.
I'm hoping it's the mosquito abatement district,
Yes.
not the mosquito.
Mosquito.
Terrifying.
Mosquito abatement was last one.
Any other public comment or communication? All right, so we are now going to adjourn to closed session for the items as listed on the agenda. And if I say that,